Hello, Hebrews and Shebrews. Welcome to another episode of Khalifa Shrugged podcast. I am truly excited to present to you my next guest. In this episode, I had the honor of hosting the esteemed Professor Mr. Fred Kofman for a free and open discussion on the future of economics and world politics. Fred Kofman holds a long list of remarkable titles and achievements. He is the co-founder of the Hoffman-Kofman Foundation, an influential leadership foundation that he established along with Reid Hoffman, the co-founder of LinkedIn. Additionally, Fred has served as a special coach and advisor to industry giants such as Google, LinkedIn, Microsoft, Facebook, and many others. He is also the visionary behind the Conscious Business Academy and the author of two business masterpieces, Conscious Business and The Meaning Revolution. On a personal note, I find it difficult to express the profound impact Fred has had on my own life. Without his spiritual teaching and guidance, I would not be here with you today. I am forever grateful for his positive influence over me. I invited Fred to shed light on modern-day economics and unravel the true story behind it. Together we try to explore the history of tomorrow by checking the connections between the COVID-19 pandemic, the worldwide inflation, and the US debt crisis. Or, in another word, what world do we really live in? And now, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome this great philosopher, my almighty teacher, the one of his kind, Fred Kofman. Enjoy. I'm truly excited to have you here. I'm way too excited. Before everything, I owe you a huge thank you for in the past few years, I've been going through a lot of turmoil, COVID, and a lot of things were happening in my life, and nothing that I would prevail or accomplished without the help of Fred Kofman. So I would start with huge thank you for your work and who you are. You've been a personal mentor and role model for me. So thank you very much, Fred, for doing it.
Well, it's very touching to hear you say that, Khalifa. I feel like I have a good friend in you. So I'm honored to be here and have a chat.
The honor is all mine. I would start by saying that there's a lot of titles that I could put after your name. Professor you had a PhD from Berkeley in economics. You are a leadership persona in the Silicon Valley. You worked in all major companies that one might think of, Google, LinkedIn, Microsoft. The list goes on, and you are the author of three books that I know of, The Meaning Revolution, Conscious Business, and the other one is Meta Management Trilogy, right? It's three books?
Yeah, it's three books, but that's in Spanish. It's too
Okay.
long to translate.
Those are the ones that I didn't read. The other ones are like masterpieces, and alongside with all the titles that I could put next to your name, I think that for me you are a philosopher, basically, a very smart person and a leader, which makes it for me a huge honor to personally know you and get touched with your work, because as I've said, I'm very humbled about our friendship, and I'm, again, truly excited. So yesterday I've been listening to a podcast from a Navy SEALs podcast in Israel, Israeli Navy SEAL podcast, and the two guys that were talking, two ex-Navy SEALs guys, started the conversation by saying, "We met at Hoffman-Kofman," and immediately got proud and amazed that this wave that started 3 years ago keeps hitting here in Israel, and it's doing a huge community and bonds between people, and it's amazing. So I would start from that. If you could say, what is Hoffman Kaufman? How you got the idea, and what's all that jazz?
Well, Hoffman Kaufman is a foundation sponsored by Reid Hoffman and myself that has as a mission to develop exemplars of excellence, men and women that would be a role model, um, an example to emulate, maybe a light for others to follow. Now, that is not a consequence of birth or genetic attributes. The exemplary nature of a life is a consequence of choices and habits that one develops and attitudes that one grows very slowly over many years by consistent practice and a commitment to a higher purpose through a path that is guided and guardrailed by values. Um, I've been reading about that all my life. I was blessed to work with very famous people, very powerful people, very rich people. And to be honest, I never felt I'd like to be like him or I'd like to be like her. I never saw a life that seemed to me worthy of emulation. Like I aspire to look like that. So I decided at one point, well, I have to first become it myself, um, and then invite other people to join me in the path. Not not in a way that is egocentric, like oh, be like me. It's not that um, I want people to shine in a way that other people say I want to be Khalifa. No, but maybe you develop a quality of resilience by struggling with lots of difficult things in your life, and you were able to hold yourself with grace in the face of great adversity. And that's a huge inspiration for people that see their own adversities as insurmountable, as things that overwhelm them. And knowing that, for example, you may have felt overwhelmed too, and that feeling overwhelmed is not an obstacle for grace. And it's not an obstacle. In fact, as the Stoic says, it's not an obstacle in the way, because the obstacle is the way. That precisely the overwhelm and the difficulty and the challenge is the path through which you shaped yourself, through which you polish yourself from maybe a lump of coal into a diamond. But that required heat, and it required pressure, and it required stress. But it was heat and pressure and stress that were held and managed in a particular way. So the foundation is wanting to, well, teach people how to develop those process habits to deal with life in a graceful and inspiring manner. We decided, well, I decided to, to to not have to choose people from zero. No, not to say, okay, let's do a call, see who's interested. Um, as a I would say market segment, we chose to piggyback on the Israel Defense Forces that would choose from amongst all the Israelis the people that were most capable of withstanding pressure or leading others into challenging situations or handling very difficult problems, and invite them to join the elite units. So we started like the Navy SEALs um, or the unit or other elite organizations within the IDF, and we talked to the alumni and said, "Here's a program that, if you were doing this in a company, would probably cost between $20,000 and $30,000 in terms of the level of investment and the teachers that are participating and the material and the effort and all that. But we're going to do it for free. And given there's a slight wealth difference between Reed and myself. Reed is the founder in economic means, and I am the founder in, I would say, the practical means. And then we have a late stage co-founder, Zur Ginosar, who also who started being the program manager, but he's become really the leader of the program in Israel. And now he runs the program. I oversee it and participate, and Reed funds it. So that's the organization.
Amazing. From my side, I would say that starting the program was quite interesting because it got me in a very challenging times. As I said, it was like a huge thing that I was basically in a stormy sea, and this was a life jacket. And the interesting thing about it, you talked about habits, that we started by having this daily routine of waking up 5 a.m., taking care of our diet and meditations and workout. And I would say, come on, I have so much things to have on my plate now. I'm having so much things on my plate to handle, and this is what they're asking for me, like from me to, I don't know, meditate now. This is the last thing that I would have spare time for. But the at the end, like if there's no end to this process that I started 3 years ago, but the idea is now I feel much more like a fighter. I do my daily life as a combat soldier. I never been in a better shape physically. I do my yoga, my meditations. I take care of all of those things, knowing that first things first, and then you can have this approach to life, because the weaker person in me keeps like the one that says, I'm overwhelmed, this is too much, I can't handle it. It's still there, but I need to keep doing a daily work on overcoming this notion, knowing that obstacle is the way, and keep feeding myself with the right nutrition and the spiritual nutrition to know that I need to aspire to higher places, and it's a daily work. Uh, and this is all from you and Tsur, basically, who also became a personal mentor and is an amazing guy. This is why we had such a huge impact on a, like, Hoffman Kofman start becoming a very well-known thing in Israel, and it's amazing to see, because seeing it from the start, so it's amazing.
Well, you used exactly the word that I had in mind to start the program, which is translate the fiber of a warrior that goes into battle against a physical enemy to a spiritual warrior that goes into battle with maybe the lower ego, the part of yourself or myself that wants to give up, that wants to surrender, that wants to yield and succumb to the temptation to quit, to say, oh, this is too much, I don't want it. And just change that around, as another Navy SEAL from the US says, Jocko Willing, that says, whenever something bad happens, say good, like good, this is, okay, I'll make it good. Like this is the battle. The battle is to find meaning, very much in the spirit of Viktor Frankl in his book Man in Search for Meaning, to say, okay, if you can't change it, then give it meaning. And then instead of saying only good, I raise one to that and say, good, thank you. Like, thank you, universe, thank you, God, thank you, spirit, thank you, life, for allowing me the opportunity to participate in this epic moment. And it's been my sustenance. One thing is to say it, but during these last 3 very dark years, I'd say since 2020, the world has been horrific. I don't have words to describe it. And so many times I have felt the temptation to hide, the temptation to disappear, the temptation to give up, um, and quit. And then it's always this fire inside, the warrior, the internal warrior that says, good, thank you. What an opportunity to be present, to be a witness to this, even if I can't change it. I am the part of consciousness that is able to experience it and just bear the full horror of what's happening and just hold it and not freak out and not go crazy, not go angry and resentful, but just hold it in consciousness with compassion. And that for me has been life saving. So when you say I don't have time to meditate, I don't have time not to meditate because I go. I mean, I'd be gone. I don't know. I would have killed myself. I would be completely broken, suicidal. Um, what I have seen, the friends that I have lost, the horrors that have happened in front of my eyes. The death of my father, the loss of her mind of my mother in very suspicious circumstances. Very personal and very universal to see my children take decisions that I think will ruin their lives in spite of my advice, and a world that has gone completely berserk, crazy. How to withstand the sight of that? How to withstand the full weight of being conscious in the midst of that? Well, I don't know. It takes a spiritual warrior. And that's also why we chose to build on the training that the elite units in the IDF have had, because it was the investment thesis of the program, if you will, is okay. Let's take the people that know how to be warriors, and I mean warriors, intelligence operators, all sorts of, like, you're a warrior, people who are who have been willing to confront mortal danger in service of their duty to something higher than themselves. Let's take that spirit and extend it. Like, there's a market adjacency. I'm using now more business terms, but there's an adjacency that is easier to get into if you have had that kind of preparation than if you have to start by, I don't know, overcoming your fear of heights, or overcoming your fear of the dark, or getting in shape because you are, 100 pounds overweight and you've never done any exercise, or all those things that, I don't disparage them, because in the experience of the person, it is as big of a challenge to go from 50 pounds overweight to being in shape that maybe it is for you to, I don't know, run an ultra marathon. And you say, oh no, but running an ultra marathon is so much more. Like, no, I mean, I run marathons, and my goal was to run twice the world record. So I gave myself the handicap of twice. But I said, when I run at twice at half the speed, I'm more or less spending the same amount of effort from an internal standpoint. So the internal experience is still available to anybody. No matter, it doesn't matter. Like, if you're in a wheelchair, then what is the stretch that will let you own your life more? And this is completely independent of external standards. But in order to inspire other people, why does everybody watch the Olympics? Why do people watch the marathoners that run a marathon in 2 hours and nobody was watching me? I might make it in 4 hours, but nobody will celebrate. it's not the difference of what happens with me, but it's the difference in the inspiration of what's possible for a human being. What's the tip of the spear that opens, or the one that breaks the trail and opens the possibility for everybody else to say, oh, that's possible, I can do that. And I don't have a lot of admiration for sports stars or famous people or rich people. As I said, I've been blessed to know them, and I'm not. I mean, I'm not in that level, but I've been mingling with them, and I'm advising them, and I help them. And because of that, I also see the dark side that most people don't see. No magazine is going to publish the stuff that I talk about with them. So I say, what happens if we create this admiration for spiritual greatness and spiritual warriorship, the ability to handle the difficulties with a sense of purpose and meaning, and being an example of excellence even for other people. I have to say, to teach the Hoffman Kaufman, I mean, you have seen my development. I feel like every year I'm getting younger and better, because now I'm intimidated by my own students. I say like, oh my God, now I have to, okay, I need to get into frozen water even more, and I need to do more push-ups. And I mean, just not to be
They are blowing on your neck, as we say in Hebrew. Like they are keep
no, no,
pushing
no,
you.
no. They are so far ahead of me. I'm just don't want to lose sight of them. I'm the one that's trying to chase them. I don't. I mean, I don't feel I lead anything. In terms of my personal perspective, I feel very inspired by the participants in the program, and it's
By the way, for me, it was being in combat was much easier than being on a stage and talking in front of people. And this is the first change that I did intuitionally. Basically, I started my podcast because I wanted to be, instead of running out of my fear, running to the heart of it. And it was terrifying for me. I would run a marathon any given day, but standing in front of people and, you know, being in a place that I could waste their time in, sort of speak, it was terrifying for me.
good for you. And that's run towards the fire. And that's such a beautiful, like, fearlessness that says, okay, whatever my fear is, that is the gradient of maximum growth. Confront that fear, own it, and stop surrendering to it. That doesn't mean you have to do it, and it's not imprudence. It's not like go crazy and do dangerous things just as a daredevil, but just how 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 far can you push it? Like how exciting can it be? Why would you not try something? And then even when you fail, it's like, oh, okay, I was afraid of failure, and now I'm used to it. Like I failed so many times, and here I am. I'm from Argentina. This is mate, by the way. I
Mm.
don't live in Argentina, but I still keep it. And there's a song, a beautiful song that inspired me all my youth. It was a song that was composed in a very dark time. In the time when I grew up, there was a civil war in Argentina, and lots of nasty things happened around me. I was young. I was 14, so I wasn't in the middle of it, but it was impossible to be there without being splashed by the darkness. And it says, in Spanish, is tantas veces me mataron, tantas veces me morí, sin embargo estoy aquí resucitado, cantando al sol como la cigarra después de un año bajo la tierra, igual que el sobreviviente que vuelve de la guerra. And that in English, that there is so many times I have been killed, so many times I have died, and yet here I am, resuscitated, um, singing to the sun like the cicada.
Sound.
Cigarra is a cicada. After a year under the earth, exactly like the same as the survivor who comes back from the war. And
Amazing.
is such a beautiful song, and it was an inspiration because a lot of people were killed, um, a lot, and and yet I have so many deaths in my life. I mean, deaths like you. I mean, I don't mean physical. I'm not resuscitated in a physical sense, but poetically, so many things that have failed, so many sorrows, so many hardships, and yet here I am, and here we are, and the opportunity to be alive and conscious and choosing again what I'm going to do tomorrow is available. And everything is a lesson. Everything is a lesson. So that's why I I, I, I want to raise Joko's mantra even more. Not just good, but good. Thank you. It's like yes, um, pressure is a privilege. That's another phrase of the Stoics. So just being subject to the pressure, it's a privilege to respond, to be able to provide for others, to protect, to create meaning. That is, it's such a incredible honor, but the price to pay is that, well, you have to be in the middle of the shit. You can't just,
Yeah.
I don't want to get my hands dirty. Oh, ooh, I
Mhm.
don't want to get into the swamp. There's mud.
And
Um,
we get so personalized, like we identify with our heart feelings, with our pain, and with all the negative things that come from high pressure experience. And to be honest, you already touched base on that, so let's go deep on it, because you said obstacle is the way, and horrific things that we had here. So I think that in terms of historical point of view, I think that we had the mother of all obstacles basically that we are handling here. This is the hard reality that I got awakened from, knowing that before I started Hoffman Kaufman, I was a socialist. I voted for the Labour Party. I was deep into social democracy and all this crap. Sorry for my French, but um once COVID started, we had a Zoom with you in Hoffman Kaufman, and you said a very small sentence, like it was almost meaningless. One could easily pass it. Like you said, I mean, look at the stock market, and we are talking on May 2020. Businesses are closed. You have all those lockdowns, crazy things going on. And you said, look at the stock market. What's going there is disgusting. And I said, wow, that's a very strong word to say, like disgusting. What's disgusting in it? And this is how I started my journey of going through all these rabbit holes. Economically, I started learning and reading books and all these kind of things. So I would like to ask you, in your own words, what is terrible in COVID and this experience that we started in 2020, and why do you think it's a horrific experience?
well, I am convinced we're in the middle of a spiritual battle like has never existed in the history of humanity. There's nothing like this at the global scale. The root is timeless. It's a corruption in the human soul, but the technological expansion of that corruption is at a level that is unique, and it threatens to devour the humanity of humanity. I would say the corruption is already, I would say, from the beginning of of humanity. You know, the Noah what's called the Noahide, I don't know how you say, Noah, the laws before the Ten Commandments. In the Bible, there's the laws that are from Noah that are not just for the Jewish people, but for all humanity. And they include the beginning, the commandments: do not murder, do not steal, do not covet your neighbor's wives or assets, do not lie. Why? I mean, this happens from the beginning. Um, what is the corruption? Well, the corruption is the desire to get something for nothing, to control, to enslave other people, and make them live their lives for my service. So I don't have to work hard to get what I want. That is a temptation inherent in the human soul. And I think that has grown to what some people call the moment of a prison planet. We're in a prison planet. Everything is regulated, everything is surveilled. We are in the midst of a fifth generation warfare where the battleground is your mind. There is no physical battleground, although there are some, but the most important one is through propaganda, through mind control, undue influence, pushing people, coercing people, creating lies that convince people to do things in their detriment for the benefit of others. Let me take, for example, the socialism. I mean, this comes from a long way back, but I'll I'll come to the present moment. But if you ask me, I'm a socialist too. Like I would love a world where we're all brothers and sisters and we all share and there's no need for property, there's no scarcity. I mean, the vision is absolutely beautiful. And in fact, I consider myself a big supporter of kibbutzim. Why? It's not the property arrangements. A kibbutz, what makes it moral for me is that they don't try to impose their kibbutznik philosophy on anybody else. If you want to be a member of the kibbutz, you're welcome. You don't want to be a member of the kibbutz, well, you can be a neighbor. You can have your business right next to the kibbutz, and maybe the people from the kibbutz will come and buy something from you and participate in the market economy to exchange. So I don't have a problem with socialism as a voluntary economic arrangement. I think it doesn't work for other reasons, but it's a technical problem. It's not a moral problem. It would be an economic and incentive problem, and maybe, well, for sure, socialism works inside the family because every family is a socialist unit, and it's a beautiful one. You don't charge rent to your kids, or you don't expect your husband or your wife to like pay you or do arm's length transactions. It's a unit and it's fine. If people want to expand that to a larger and larger, to a clan, I mean, totally fine. I don't have a problem, and I actually think it's a beautiful experiment. I totally support it. But when you're talking about socialism as a political system, you're talking about expropriation of the means of production to socialize them. Now you're talking violence, you're talking death, you're talking theft. I'm going to take over things. So at that point, I part ways. I say, that's evil. I'm sorry. You want to be socialist with your effort, with your life, but forcing other people, no, 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 no. And that's the corruption. To say, for example, just to put my finger on a hot topic, I think it's totally fine for, yeshivot to exist in Israel and be funded voluntarily by the people who want to support them. Donations from Israel, from outside, no problem. But saying, I'm going to use the power of the state to threaten those who don't want to voluntarily contribute money and tax them to use those funds to support something that is of social benefit. That's like a kibbutz saying, we are important for Israel, so we need the state to tax the people who don't want to be in a kibbutz, to give us money because we deserve it. There's no other way to describe that than theft. It is theft. It's theft through third parties. I don't do the dirty deed, but I get someone else to go, or to vote, for example, for a law that would make homosexuality criminal, which was the case in Israel till not very far back. Now, you don't like it, don't do it. I mean, you don't want to relate to other people, to associate with people who are gay or lesbian. Don't do it. But to say you wouldn't go with a gun to hurt them, but you would vote for someone that promises that they're going to go with a gun to hurt them and put them in a cage. I'm sorry, any lawyer will tell you that that's as bad as, I mean, if you hire a sicario to go kill someone, you are a murderer. There's no, you can't put a distance just by saying, oh, well, I didn't do it. But you endorse it, you support it. And that's what I see at the global scale, that more and more people are being co-opted in their good intentions to use abhorrent, criminal, unethical means, which is to force other people at gunpoint to do things they don't want to do and explain themselves by some sort of social welfare. And I will include the forced vaccinations. I will include quarantines. I will include lockdowns. I would include preventing people from going to commerces. All that is based on guns. There's a gun behind every one of those norms that says, if you don't do it, I'll hurt you, or I'll take you to a cage, or I'll do something. That, I mean, the level of fascism all over the world, it's shocking. It's absolutely shocking. But I mean, that was already bad. I was in a dark place just seeing that, feeling terrible.
I wanted to add on that. It's if I may, that it's no coincidence that you went from COVID to socialism, because it's basically a state of mind of centralized
Exactly.
power, that
Yes.
I will decide for everybody what everybody, I know better from everybody what to do and how to conduct their lives. And this is my
No, but
question,
it's
by the
worse
way,
than
one.
that, Khalifa. It's worse than that. It's not just that I'll decide. If you don't, it's that if you don't do what I tell you, I will kill you. It's the violence. I mean, you want to decide for everybody? Be my guest. I don't know. I mean, there's lots of crazy people out there that think they know what's the best thing for the world. I don't even know them. I don't care about them. Now, when you're that kind of crazy, arrogant, as Friedrich Hayek, a Nobel laureate in economics, called it, if you are subject to the fatal conceit, the fatal arrogance of believing you can decide for everybody, and then you enforce that with violence. Now we're talking evil. Now we're talking socialism. We're talking national socialism. By the way, the difference between national and international socialism was the difference between the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany. So it's not like, oh, no, fascism is completely different. No, fascism it's just the other side of the coin. It's the same centralized statist coin everywhere. And democratic socialism is the same. It's four wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner. So democracy doesn't solve the problem. Now everybody's democracy, democracy. Okay, let's have voting the Hutus. How many Hutsis are we going to kill? Oh no, but this is fine. By the way, everything that Hitler did was according to the law, and it was a constitutional republic. North Korea is a constitutional republic. You want constitutional? Venezuela is a constitutional republic. So no. I mean, it's always the same corruption. Is I know better, and I'm going to make you do it. And it's the kind of the darkness that you are completely selfish and arrogant. And then, you present yourself like an angel when the truth is you're the devil incarnate. That is the demonic spirit in the world using violence to force people. And it is behind COVID measures. It's behind democratic autocracy. It's behind anything that will preempt people from making voluntary arrangements on how they want to live together. I mean, it's so simple. It's so simple. Now you can agree to do something, and then you have a contract. So I'm not talking about no rules. There are lots of rules. What I don't want is rulers, the people that feel that they can impose their rules through coercion on others because they know better and they're justified by some sort of crazy story they have behind. They put on some suit, and now they're the emissary of God, and they get to say everything they want. And now we are living a technocracy, where the technocrats have the power to decide how they are going to evolve even the human species. So transhuman, I call it T5, totalitarian, technocratic, transnational, transhumanistic takeover. That's the T5. That's the darkness that we're here. And it includes socialism. There's no difference between crony capitalism, socialism, global organizations, non-profits, democracies. I mean, it's such a compact mix of evil people, but they all have the same. All of them want to centralize. So I'm saying decentralize everything. Why stop with cryptocurrency? I mean, decentralize everything. Even crypto is not decentralized. Now they're trying to create Web 3.0, but crypto is totally centralized. As long as you have a choke point, a single point of failure, the evil people will take over that single point of failure. And that's why you have what's called regulatory capture. All the regulatory agencies are captured. I mean, talk about the FDA and Big Pharma, if there's an unholy alliance. I mean, that's why even, I mean, the so-called capitalists are fascists. The public-private partnerships of the World Economic Forum, that is the new age fascism. It's the same fascism forever with a new name to hide the real intent, which is to push people to become slaves. And it's
But
happened.
you,
But let me tell you what is the shock. This is not the worst. I mean, that is not what shocked me. Is that now there's so much information about how the vaccines don't stop transmission, don't stop infection, have a lot of side effects. I mean, this is not conspiracy theory. This is absolutely proved, totally proved. Nobody cares. I mean, I can
because
see why there were
if you
some.
question if you question Fauci, then you question science. This is why.
But nobody cares. I remember something that shocked me. I mean, this is a small scene, and I can't believe I remember it after so many years. I saw a movie in Argentina many years ago. I think it was called the Children of Brazil or something. But it was something related to Simon Wiesenthal and the Nazis. And in one scene, there was a survivor of a concentration camp that sees one of the guards. This is like 30 years later, okay, or 40 years later, 50 years later, and he just can't take it and commits suicide. Just seeing the guy that like nothing happened, and he's, I mean, living a normal life and saying, well, nobody cares, nothing happened. And now I understand that feeling, because now it's worse. Now it's not even a secret of what happened. All the corruption, all the evil, all the darkness is out in the light. I mean, it's overwhelming, and nobody cares. Well, I say nobody. The vast majority of the people, it's like no. Now they're, I don't know. Now somebody said Putin should get the Nobel laureate prize in medicine because he stopped the pandemic. Nobody talks about the pandemic. Everybody talks about the war in Ukraine because now that's the news of the day. So the psychological operation to confuse people, now it's like, oh no, nothing happened. Now let's talk about Putin, and then it's going to be Taiwan, and now the war with China, and there's always something new to distract people. But I mean, I know people that run large organizations, large universities that mandated the vaccines, coerced hundreds of thousands of young people to get an injection that has a lot more costs than benefits. We today know, for people of age that they're in the university, and they haven't said a single thing. Now, slowly they've taken out the mandate, but they never acknowledge anything. They never talk nothing. I can't talk to them anymore. I just can't do it. It's. I mean, I deal with them occasionally. I mean, I'm not antisocial, but I remember that scene in the movie where I'm seeing the people who did horrible things. Some of them probably because they were confused, but today there's no excuse for that. You might have been confused 3 years ago. It's a scary time, but today's not a scary time. Today, what is the show that says the truth is out there? The X Files.
X Files.
Yeah, the truth is out there. Now the truth is out there, and you don't have to dig very much to find it. It's everywhere. You have to actively shut your eyes wide shut, just go crazy and na 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 na. I don't know anything, and even then you can't avoid it. And
The
yet
truth is in plain sight, as we
it's
say.
complete. I mean, you can't close your eyes. It's overwhelming, and no lesson. Nobody has learned anything. Nothing has happened. That's the darkness. That is the real darkness. And say, okay, who's going to look at the world and say some things? I mean, how many times? I mean, I lived in Argentina when people said never again, never again. That was the
And what
phrase.
is the inflation rate now in Argentina?
It's over 100%. But it's never again. It's all the time again. I mean, after the World War II was never again. The propaganda campaigns. I mean, the Germans again doing it. Israel doing it. I mean, there's no. I mean, never again. They're the organizations in Israel from Holocaust survivors saying, "Wake up!" I mean, this feels exactly like that. I'm not saying it, but they are saying it, and and it will happen again and again and again and again, while we still have this seed of corruption and the temptation to make other people live their lives for our benefit, for our sake, even if it's just the righteous feeling that I'm right and I know what to do and they need to implement that, the technocratic, transhuman desire to be gods. Somebody has to stand up and say, no, that's wrong. That's wrong. And it is not a revolutionary, like go out and, I don't know, do something. I don't, honestly, I don't know what can be done physically. I mean, I don't have an idea, but I know the most powerful word in the language in any country is no. Law. Not with my, not with my, not with,
Consent.
no. I do not consent, not with my consent. And I nullify. There's something in the American tradition which is called nullification. So a state can nullify a federal law by saying, I'm not enforcing it, I'm not doing it. So, okay, I cannot change the world, but I can change my world. How? Not with my consent. I do not consent. I do not consent to anything that violates the moral law. And the moral law is don't kill, don't murder, don't steal, don't lie, don't enslave, don't vandalize, don't destroy, don't initiate aggression against other people. It's so simple. And most people agree with that, but I'm pushing it to say, don't do it and don't endorse or consent to anybody else doing it. And now we have a problem. Like, okay, well, yeah, I'm not putting you in a cage, but I'd like the government to put you in a cage if you smoke the wrong grass. Tobacco, yes. Marijuana, no. I mean, that's evil. That's a crime. Says who? And it doesn't matter if I smoke or not smoke. It's the principle. Who has the right to use violence to preempt someone else to do something that doesn't hurt other people, doesn't invade other people?
You,
So, I mean, if you have a shop and you don't want anybody to walk in without a vaccine, you have the right to say, "Look, I'm anxious. I don't want people to come into my establishment or my house if you're not vaccinated. Kola kavod, you have all the right to do that. But you come into my house to say you can't leave your house if you don't vaccinate? I mean, where does that come from? Where does that stop? When does the social pressure find a limit to invade the individual? And the fact that we don't have, I mean, it's very sad. Very few people. I mean, there are some people, and they're standing and they're heroes, but they're paying such a tremendous price for trying to reveal the truth or for argue. And it's not against anything. It's to say let's protect the space of privacy, of freedom, and they are demonized. I mean, it's just, what's the controversy? And I mean, now I don't know. RFK is junior. He's saying, well, he's running the, to be a candidate for president, and everybody calls him an anti-vaxxer. That's it. Oh, you're an anti-vaxxer. That's one of those phrases to like to stop the conversation. You're an
The
anti-vaxxer.
power of labeling. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Safe and effective. Safe and effective. That's hypnotics.
Well, for me, the idea at some point I had this idea because you come from economics, I come from philosophy or history, so I started realizing there's a huge idea that I grew up on, that on when Berlin Wall fell in 92, I think it was, that communism lost the war, that United States won the war, and capitalism prevailed over communism. And now I start seeing it as it once one like capitalism won one small fight, but it lost the war, and now there's no capitalism, and the social state of mind just prevailed. And what is dangerous about it is that now it's combined with technocracy, like Chat GPT, that one might argue now, what, we tried to be communist or socialist, but we are human beings and we are limited in our capacity to process huge amount of data. So let's put it to Chat GPT now, and now it can rearrange the wealth, and you having Janet Yellen talking about universal basic income, and all these kind of things. So I find it really scary. Am I right? Like,
You're totally right. It is scary as hell. Um, the In 1920, Ludwig von Mises, one of the founding fathers of the Austrian School of Economics, wrote a book called Socialism. And in that book, he proved that socialism is ontologically impossible. It's not epistemologically impossible. You're using a computability argument. It's like, okay, there's too much information. No person can calculate. Even the computers can't do it. But maybe now with ChatGPT, and there are people saying that now we can have a technocracy. And technocracy, we can have an economy based on energy consumption prices and blah blah blah. And it's the wet dream of every socialist or communist or fascist or technocratic enslaver or slave master, which is to say, I can run things, the arrogance, or ChatGPT can run things. Of course, I'm going to manage ChatGPT. Somebody has to implement it, unless you want to have Terminator robots enforcing the ChatGPT instructions, which, it's not out of the question. But there's a very basic problem. I see if I can explain it in economic terms. It's not enough to have factual information to make economic decisions. You need to make information based on counterfactual information. And counterfactual information is, what would you do if? And what would you do in this other way? So for everything you do, there's infinite things that you don't do, because there's always what's called opportunity cost. Every time, like for example, you and I are having this conversation, I could be exercising. I could be playing with my dogs. I could be writing emails. So how many other things could I be doing in this hour and a half? Infinitely many other things. but I'm expressing my preference from amongst all those possibilities by choosing an action and committing my resources, in this case, my time, to participate with you. This is my favorite thing to do right now. How does anybody know? Because I'm doing it. If I wasn't doing it, I would be doing whatever else I chose. But by choosing this, I also chose not to do a whole bunch of other things that nobody knows. When in a market, when you choose to pay for something, you are providing information about your scale of preferences with respect to many other things. It's a very complex argument, but basically, if you have no market, you have no way to price things. There's no way to price things according to the votes or the preferences of every individual, which is what a market will do. As soon as you start intervening and fixing prices or taking things from some people and giving them to others and so on and so forth, everything a government does, and this includes democratic government, it includes any government. The government cannot avoid influencing the market. So all the markets are not strictly capitalist, and I don't think capitalism won, because capitalism has never been tried. It would be great. It's a great idea. Someone ought to try it. So you cannot create a calculability problem without having the data. But the data is not factual, it's also counterfactual. And you cannot elicit the counterfactual data unless people have choices, unless you, quote, ask everybody to participate in the market. That argument was done in 1920. Nobody has been able to refute it. It's called the calculation problem in a socialist economy. That was the name of the chapter, the calculation. And calculation is not because of complexity, it's because you don't know. It's not epistemological, it's ontological. You cannot find out what people prefer, and you can't even ask people, because people vote with their actions. So unless people have the freedom to act, you cannot aggregate those actions in a market and know what people want and how to operate.
Let me
Anyway,
see if I understood the argument correctly. It's like if you go through somebody's receipts, it's his idea of things that he decided to buy on his own free will, knowing the calculation of how much effort he needed for his money to invest in this certain thing, like if it's
exactly.
important for it. So if you eliminate this thing, then you'll have no market, and that will make no sense. Did I got it?
Exactly. You got it perfectly. I mean, sometimes when I coach people, they say, well, let me tell you what's important for me. I don't want to know what's important for you from your mouth. Show me your calendar and show me your checkbook. Then I know what's important. No, but you don't understand. Like, for example, I care a lot about my kids. Okay, how much time did you spend with your kids? Show me your calendar for the last 6 months. How much time were you awake at home with your kids? No, but you don't understand. I'm trying to plan. Yes, I understand better than you. Don't lie to me. And don't lie to your kids, because you can tell your kids, I really care about you, but if you're not present, that you're voting with your life, not with your mouth. And the same with your checkbook or your credit card statement or your bank account. That's how you use your resources. So the way you express what matters to you is how you use your resources. So when you say, for example, I don't have time to meditate, I mean, how can I do? Well, you're expressing a hierarchy of values. That means you don't find a lot of value. Or I don't have time to exercise. Okay, I have so much to do. You don't have anything to do. You have 24 hours a day, and you have to choose how to use your 24 hours a day. Now, I don't have a problem. There are people who choose not to exercise. I don't think it's immoral not to exercise. It's a choice. People can, or I don't have time to read. Okay, yeah. I mean, but don't say I don't have time to read. You don't dedicate time to read. You have time to do whatever can be done in 24 hours in every day. But you choose to allocate that time to the things that matter to you.
It's a matter of preference.
Exactly. That's an expression of your preference. So money and time are resources that you use to try to improve your state. You're trying to create a future that is better than the present. And your energy, your calories, your muscular power, everything. So you do things in life for the sake of improving your condition. Now you need to have a mission, you need to have a purpose in life and all that. And and then you invest. Just like you're an entrepreneur. And you can make good investments or terrible investments. You can invest your time and make a big mistake. You can invest your money and make a big mistake. Your business fails. So, are you doing the best thing you can with your time? And I think very few people take a step back to reflect on what is what is this life for? What do I want out of this life? What is going to be a fulfillment that I will experience by looking back on my life? Everybody's so trapped, and I include myself. I've been reflecting about my life, um, how how much time and energy I spent on doing things that were really propaganda, that I was unduly influenced, brainwashed, believing things that are not so by people who do designer drugs, like like your apps, in the phone. That's like a designer drug to keep you engaged, or the TV is a designer drug to induce certain thoughts, or the newspapers or whatever. I mean, it's a battle for your mind, and unless you develop that warrior attitude, you will end up not living your life. You will end up living the life that someone else designed for you. 1984, the George Orwell book, or A Brave New World, those are the combination of those with a mixture of Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. That's where we are with Fahrenheit 451. I mean, we live in a dystopic nightmare right now, and ChatGPT can be used for good. There are a lot of excellent, beautiful things that could happen with AI, but it's basically augmenting human intelligence. And human intelligence, if it's not guided by ethics, by the soul, by a sense of transcendent purpose and values, it's a very frightening thing. Intelligence is neutral. Without values, it can be used for very evil things.
Well, you were talking about prices earlier, and I uh, never thought of myself as someone who knows anything about economics, because it's always too complicated for my narrow head, I must say, because you have the house passing a bill of reducing the bill of reduction, the inflation, and now they have the inflation is soaring, and they are voting on the debt ceiling. So I say, okay, something in me doesn't go, like something in my logic probably is not working right. But the idea is, we talked earlier about prices. It's one of, I think that I have this moment of aha moment, that all this fiasco is because people are trying to basically manipulate prices, and the mother of all prices is the interest rate prices. And you can fool few people for some time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. And this is the consequence of what we are seeing, that the debt ceiling is just being pushed away, and this can push down the road all the way. Am I right about it?
The only thing I disagree is that you can't fool people all the time.
Oh,
These are psychopaths that have no empathy and have been lying and using violence to impose their will since forever. Forever. Anybody who will rule by force, it's a psychopath. You can't trust anything they say. So when you have the Inflation Reduction Act, I mean, the Federal Reserve talking about inflation, not one time they talk about the increase in their balance sheet. I mean, the fact that they're printing money, basically. I mean, without getting too technical, but it's like, okay, you look at all the money that has been printed, the growth of the monetary base, M2. I mean, it's economics is actually fairly simple when you get through the lies. It's not that difficult, but it has been made difficult because it's like the Matrix. is the wool that will be pulled over your eyes so you don't see the truth. The truth is quite simple, straightforward. Everybody can understand economics. I mean, I have a doctorate in economics, and I work with 10 Nobel laureates, so I can talk about that. And I can tell you all the Nobel laureate level of deep economics. I don't know anything. I mean, I learned economics after I got my PhD and after I taught at MIT, because when I was in that world, it was very complex, game theory and economic, high math, topology, crazy shit that never helped me understand the real world. And now with other, I would say, the economic theory, mostly the Austrian school that I mentioned, and some understanding about the political structures also based on principles of the Austrian school. And I'm looking and it's like, okay, this is not so hard. It's horrible, but it's not so complicated. But it is horrible when you see the lies and the manipulation. And it's all to justify the use of violence to make other people live for you, which is what every bureaucrat ends up doing. For them or for their cronies. And people, there's not better business than to buy politicians. Like when you look at Congress or the power to pass laws in the US, I don't know exactly in Israel, but I'm sure it's the same. The lobbying organizations to get your political desire implemented by your servant, whoever you've bought. It's the corruption is so tremendous. And people say, "Oh, it's just okay. It's Biden." If only were Trump, or vice versa. It's Trump. If we only got Biden, and you go back, it's always the circles that now things are going to change because we'll choose the right person. There's no right person. There's no way. There's no way. You cannot do it like that. That
It's a
principle.
self-preserve system that keeps growing like an organism, that it's looking for more power, more money, and this is why it's self-destructive.
Yes. So I don't believe the solution is in some technique or the right quote person that can get, because the right person would never get to a place of power. If you're the right person, they'll eliminate you way early in the process. You cannot, the kind of deals that you have to make in order to even be competitive in that space, they disqualify you as being the right person that can do something.
It reminds me. You earlier mentioned JRK, um, and it reminded me of one of the first lessons that I learned when I got to the army. That somebody told me, the army is a very large organization. If you pee on it, it will get wet. But if it's pet on you, then you will get drowned.
That's a good way. Yes. And if and RFK Jr. knows about that. I mean, he's very outspoken. Said, yeah, both my father and my uncle. The uncle was President Kennedy, and his father was Bobby Kennedy, the Attorney General. Both of them, he said, they were killed by the CIA. They were murdered. And now, Tucker Carlson said that. I mean, and the documents 60 years later, they're still secret. They won't release some documents because of national security. So I mean, what are they hiding there? More than 60 years.
Yeah,
Almost.
the secrecy is terrifying for me. For like in the corona
Well,
during COVID.
Pfizer asked to have the documents withheld for 75 years, and the FDA agreed. It was a judge who said, no, you can't do that. And now that they released the documents, it's horrifying. Now we know why they didn't want these things to be released. But you know what's the most horrifying thing? That it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Durham came up with a report. Yeah, it was all the FBI, Russiagate, it's all a lie. The FBI held Hunter Biden's laptop. 50 intelligence officers from the CIA said that was Russian disinformation. It was all a campaign. Blinken was involved, the secretary. I mean, it's all out there. The truth is everywhere. I mean, it's the own government that says that. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Nothing changes.
and
Totally,
everything
totally
and
impugnated.
everything goes according to plan. Like if I go through different media sources, if I can point on a certain pattern. So one pattern that goes is the fight against cash money. Governments all over the world are reducing the capability of choosing cash money, reducing the amounts, going is a like earlier stage of CBDC.
Yes,
Um, a penny for your thought about what is CBDC, and how do you see
the
this thing?
same. It's the same. It's a grid of control and enforcement. The cash is it's secret. Cash is not controllable. It's decentralized. But you don't even need CBDCs. Just having your bank account, your credit card. Now, in today's world, you can be deplatformed, and Trudeau did that with the truckers in Canada. Anybody who contributed money is like, okay, I would shut down your bank account. Why? Because we don't like you donating funds to a protest. I mean, what? But that's the way with CBDCs. You're basically a ward of the state. You're a slave. Anything. I mean, you can be cut off. It's like Minority Report. Everybody can be controlled how you spend the money, but you don't need CBDCs. I mean, search engines are saving your searches. Every word you say is recorded somewhere. Every podcast, everything is there. So I mean, that's the grid of control, and money is a critical part. Is the resource, and then universal basic income. Then you're a slave because you depend on some centralized power to give you your resources, and then people get used to being dependent of the state. It's what every socialist government does. They create a whole army of people whose livelihood depend on the state. And then these people will go in the street and kill anybody who oppose centralized control because you're threatening their livelihood. Of course, they'll kill you. Happened, Chavez had 95% approval rating in Venezuela when he became president. 95%. And now the Venezuelans are all over the world saying, oh, we're poor, we can't live. The average Venezuelan has lost over 20 pounds, more than 10 kilos. The average weight of the body of the Venezuelans has gone down by more than 10 kilograms over these years. I mean, talk about a national disaster. I mean, I don't even know how they track that, but that is a statistic. So yeah, CBDCs are part of the grid of control. And I'll emphasize again, there's the basic corruption of wanting to use other people as means and not seeing them as ends in themselves. That is so clear. There's not much to say. So, but I don't want to be so dark and say, okay, this is the challenge. This is the spiritual war or the battle that we are in. And the question is how to live our lives as an act of defiance, as a nullification, saying no. No. I mean, you can obviously do that, but not with my consent, because I would say this is the demonic part of it, but it's also the mortal weakness of the whole plan. It requires the consent of the victims. It requires the consent of those who will be enslaved. The only slavery that counts is the slavery of your mind. So if you don't agree, if you do not consent, if you withstand this, even if you have to do it, now they can come and put shackles on me and take me to prison. I mean, I don't know I mean, I may fight or not, but if I fight, they'll probably kill me. So I wouldn't do it. I mean, I pay my taxes. Why? Because I'm afraid. Of course, I pay my taxes. I fulfill most of the laws. I mean, there are some laws which are so immoral that I can't do it. But I do it very responsibly. I don't want to be taken, and I know I cannot win an open fight. But there are. I mean, I don't know if I was in the U.S. during the 1800s and the law said you have to return every slave, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. Why? Because, well, I rather risk being caught, but I would never think, okay, I need to do the right thing because it's legal. Right thing and legal are orthogonal. I mean, sometimes they might coincide, sometimes they may not, but doing the right thing because of ethical values, that is only in your mind. And you can nullify everything. You can look at everything and say, I can't stop it. I can't stop what is happening, but I don't have to go along with it. I don't have to consent. And by not consenting, by creating communities of people who do not consent responsibly, again, not, this is not about revolution openly, because I think that never works. That just creates more violence. But to not consent and say, this is wrong. And this, no, this is wrong. And to speak with friends who also say, that is wrong. We don't, I don't know, we might use drugs or not use drugs, but it doesn't matter. This is not the difference. The difference is, if you think that people that use drugs responsibly, privately, without driving a vehicle and hitting someone, but if you think those people should be thrown into a cage because it's legal, it's like, well, you're not my friend. I mean, I can't be with you. It's like if you beat up your children. I'm sorry, maybe that's not illegal. I think it is illegal now, but it wasn't illegal before. But it's still, it's evil. You don't beat up your children. No, but I'm disciplined. Okay, well, maybe I can't stop you, but I can decide not to be a friend with you. You're not in my world, and I don't want to be in your world. And I think that that's the opportunity to create communities of people who are moral, who say, I want to be free and I want other people to be free too. And that's the essence of a program to develop this spiritual warriorship. Say, let's be aware. As you said, now that you learn, economics is not so difficult. The difficulty is the Keynesian, neoliberal, whatever name, neoclassical economics that is highly mathematical and all that. It's so bullshit, complete bullshit. It's a lie to confuse people because they confuse you. They'll create this diversion so that you can't think straight. And when you can't think straight, then you say, okay, I guess they know. I'm too dumb to understand. And they enslave you with us. No, you're not too dumb. You're super smart. People are more than intelligent enough to understand the basic principles if they're explained to free them as opposed to enslave them. And by creating this commitment and expanding this commitment to a community of people who want to live in peace, in freedom, with love, with justice, then we win. That's it. I mean, we may not win, like take over, the system will not change. Maybe we won't see it alive, but that's not the mission. The mission is to win your own mind. And that is totally achievable. That is possible for everybody, even if you are in prison, even if you're in a quarantine camp, there are people that proved it. I mean, I lived in the same world than everybody else during COVID, and I didn't go out, but I was able to find places where I could preserve my own, and not for a second I said, this is okay, this is wrong. I mean, and regardless, this has nothing to do with the choice that people would make about their treatments, but it's just the coercion, the imposition, the lack of freedom, the confusion, the propaganda, the demonization. Never again. Never again. I learned that lesson in Argentina. I wasn't in the Holocaust, but I was in Argentina, and that was very close, very close. So never again. And I like to see how many people are there in the world that, now that we know that the truth is out there, will really say never again, for good. And it may be a very small minority, but those are my people. I can't change the world, but I can change my world by choosing who is in my world and who is my community. And I feel very happy that you are my friend and I'm your friend, because we live in this world of morality.
Thank you very much. It's a very powerful message. I will ask you one last question about economics, about the future of the US economy, the US dollar. What do you have in mind in this regard? And if you have any advice of someone that doesn't really into these things and would like to have a better idea about what we are facing here?
Every fiat currency that has existed in history, everyone, single one, 100% has collapsed. Everyone. This is not going to be different. From the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1916 till today, against gold, which is the only real money, gold and silver, the US dollar has lost 99% of its value. It's going to lose the next 1% too. No doubt. I have absolutely no doubt. I mean, it's a certainty. No, I mean, this has happened thousands of times. Every paper currency is subject to manipulation. It's a single point of failure. From
But it's
the
the
debasement
reserve
of the
currency.
coin, it starts. I mean, as far as you can go back in history. The moment that there are like receipts that represent the physical asset that is being traded, the temptation to expand those receipts beyond the existence of the physical asset is there. That's called fraud. Nothing has changed. You can go back 4,000 years and you can find the same fraud. They would shave the coins to take out some of the metals. That's how the Roman Empire fell. That's how every empire fell. And that's how the American Empire is going to fall too. So it's going to be a multipolar world. I think the BRICS are going to use a financial weapon of mass destruction. I don't think the next war is going to be nuclear. I think the next war is going to be financial. And it's going to be bad. But I'm hopeful because all the corruption, the house of cards on which the apparent value of the fiat currencies is built is going to fall apart. I think you've interviewed Rafi Farber. Yeah, I totally agree with him about this financial situation. He calls it the end game. And I think we're in the end game. Also, Egon von Greyerz from Matterhorn, he's a Swiss, I think he's ex-banker, I'm not sure, but he'd be also, there's a whole bunch of people who talk about the collapse of the fiat currencies and the end game. So whether they reach the debt ceiling, that's circus. That's part of the hypnosis and the propaganda. But I mean, if they don't, there'll be a default, and it's going to be a big mess. But if they do, then the debt is going to go whatever, 35 trillion, 50 trillion, 200% GDP, like Japan. I mean, it gets worse and worse. And now that the interest rate is going up, the apparent irrelevant stocks of debt that all the countries have, now they're becoming very relevant because this stock is going to generate a negative cash flow because now you have to pay the interest. And this creates a vicious cycle where, it's a zombie. We live in a zombie world. There's something called a zombie company that is really dead, but it still moves. We live in a zombie economy of all the Western countries. Europe is disaster, the inflation. I mean, that we need several hours to talk about this, but basically, I think we're in the end game. I think that I'd be very shocked if we don't see progressive stresses on the system. The 2008 crisis has not finished. We're still in that same crisis, and it's. I think when the Federal Reserve has to choose between saving the financial system and debasing the coin and killing the dollar and sticking everybody that has dollars with the inflationary tax of the devaluation of the dollar, or preserving the dollar and blowing up the US economy and the financial system, it's obvious what they'll do. They've always done that. So I think they're going to print money like never before. They're going to pivot. The interest rates are going to go back down to zero. the dollar will suffer progressive devaluations. And I think at some point, nobody's going to want the US treasuries and the bonds. So the interest rate is going to skyrocket. I lived through that in Argentina. It's called hyperinflationary stagflation or hyperinflationary depression. So it's a like stagflation is stagnation and inflation. Well, put it hyper in front, and then you have hyperinflation and depression, and with the total devaluation of the coin. That's what I see happening, slowly. But as George Bernard Shaw, he answered, or I think it was, I'm not sure if it was him or Hemingway in a story that says, "How did you go broke?" Well, slowly at first, and then all of a sudden. So we're in this slowly moving closer and closer to all of a sudden. How many more banks are going to blow up because of the interest rates increase and the devaluation of their assets in the US? The same thing is happening in Europe. Credit Suisse was already the first victim. Something's going to blow up. I don't know what it is, and I don't know when it will be, but we're getting close to the time of all of a sudden. So, but we're still going slowly, slouching towards Bethlehem, like the beast in Yeats' poem. So we're in a time of grave danger, and everybody's like whistling, like, "Oh, everything's fine, nothing to see here. Move along. There's no problem with the economic system." When Yellen tells you everything is okay, and Powell tells you everything is okay, and Biden says it's the strongest economy in the world, we're close to bankruptcy. It's like Silicon Valley Bank saying, "Oh, no, there's no problem. We're just trying to recapitalize ourselves." Now, 2 days before blowing up. Or in 2008, when people say, "No, there's no problem with subprime mortgages." It's always the same, always the same. This time is not going to be any different.
Yeah, for the way I understand it is we are suffering from 100 years of misallocation of resources that build up this mirage of fake economical zombies, as you said, and now they're all collapsing. And what's dangerous about it is what happens to society and the fabric of society during those times of inflations. Then you'll see people get a worst situation that goes by the day from bad to worse. And it manifests itself in a very hard political game, and it manifests itself in politics. And this is how we basically got Hitler in after the inflation of Weimar Republic.
Totalitarianism and war is always the release valve of the collapse of the system. So that's the forecast: totalitarianism and war. And I tell you, now the US is going to give F-16s to Ukraine. They're giving them long-range missiles. It's only a matter of time until they find a way to use the planes and the long-range missiles to attack something within the borders of Russia. That is going to escalate. Then the F-16s are going to take off from airfields in Poland, and then the Russians are going to bomb the airfields in Poland because they're being attacked, and then it will be Article 5 of NATO, and it will continue escalating. And in the meantime, the US is going to fund the democracy movement in Taiwan and create an independentist party, just like they're doing in every color revolution. And maybe they'll convince Taiwan to be the next Ukraine and want to join NATO, and the Chinese are going to go crazy, and they'll create an embargo, and the US will send their aircraft carriers to break the embargo, and the hypersonic missiles are going to blow up the aircraft carriers, and who knows where that ends. I mean, this could be the end of life on this planet. At least the cockroaches will survive the nuclear war, so it won't be the end of life, but human life could be. There's a path from here to there. There are a lot of people that are concerned. It's not science fiction. It's possible, and there are all sorts of sociopaths in charge. all over the world. But I'm more worried about the U.S. getting out of control, because right now the U.S. is the hegemon that is losing its single, like the unipolar hegemony, and is being challenged by mostly China, but the BRICS, China, Russia, and India, because they all know they're in the crosshairs. So yeah, the financial stress, the military stress, where will it end? How will proxy wars show up? It's getting into be a very dangerous time. So I mean, I look at it. I don't. I just analyze. I find it fascinating. It's more interesting than any show I've ever seen on TV. It's shocking. Um, but again, I want to come back to the personal response to all this. As I said, pressure, and this. What a blessing! What an incredible honor to live in this time, to be subject to all these pressures, and say, what is the moral way to confront all this? What can we do in our worlds, not to go out and just go crazy and say, I'm going to join a political party to change things. I don't know. I don't think that game works. The only thing that works is decentralize everything. And the first thing to decentralize is the individuality of the personal soul and the human mind. So that's the battleground, and that's where we win.
uh, with this beautiful message, I think that we need to close, wrap this whole interview in a more optimistic approach, because I'm truly optimistic. Like for me, I would say that uh, a lot of things that must die are going to die. We are seeing it. As you said, for me, it's fascinating, but for me, I would look inwards to try and find love and optimism in the human spirit. I know that we are going to prevail. Whatever is going to happen is going to happen. As you taught me, we are running towards our darkest fears, and we will hit the point that we will be the change that we want to see in the world, and I do it every day.
We are the change. We are right now. Well, beautiful. And I find it very optimistic to confront the challenge responsibly and with unshakable values. And the values have nothing to do with the outcome. The values is how you behave in the moment. So they become actualized in the very expression.
Fred, my friend, it's been a true honor. I would like to give you a free stage to pass whatever, I don't know, message that you would like to forward to our friends from Hoffman Kaufman, basically first and foremost, and after that to whomever it may concern and listen to us and been with us in this journey. I would do this hours and hours with you. I truly love talking to you and get knowledge from your experience and approach. As I said, I will say again, it's been a true honor to meet you and get teach by your teaching, because for me it was a life-changing event, and I want to say thank you again from my bottom of my heart. So the stage is yours. Whatever message that you want to deliver, be my guest.
Thank you, Khalifa. Um, I heard the rabbi said that our mission on this earth is to make it beautiful, to complete the work of creating a heaven on earth. Like, how beautiful can it be? And I feel so honored to have the chance to participate in this enterprise. And everybody who agrees with this, I feel is my brother and sister. And it has nothing to do with religion, origin, history, language, age. It's totally transcendent of all that. And I find that our relationship and our friendship, it's an example because our lives are non-intersecting in all sorts of ways, but they intersect in this commitment to a beautifying mission and this transcendent set of values. And I feel really honored to be your brother. And may we find all our family and connect and grow in love and freedom and justice and truth.
Amen to that. Any given day. Thank you very much, Fred. It's
You're welcome.
again true pleasure and a pure pleasure having you in this platform, in my humble platform. Thank you so much.
You're very
And I
welcome.
hope to see you again. You're coming to Israel
Yeah,
soon,
I'm
so I
coming to
would
Israel
love to
soon.
hug
Yes,
you.
we will definitely have a big hug.
אוקיי, ביי ביי.
ביי.
זה היה עוד פרק במסע של מרד החליפים, אני מאוד מקווה שנהנתם. לפני שתלכו אני רוצה לספר לכם סיפור. אבל לפני הסיפור, אני רוצה להגיד תודה ענקית לשותף הנהדר שלי אייל חלבי על עבודת ההפקה המדהימה שהוא עושה למרד החליפים. לא יכולתי לבקש שותף יותר טוב למסע הזה ושום דבר מזה לא יכל לקרות בלי העזרה שלך. תודה אייל. ועכשיו לסיפור שהבטחתי לכם. אני רוצה שתדמיינו יחד איתי שיעור היסטוריה שיקרה עוד 50 שנה מהיום. בשיעור ההיסטוריה הדמיוני שלנו יש מרצה שמסביר לסטודנטים על תקופת הימים שלנו בזמן הזה. באיזה מילים לדעתכם היה בוחר המרצה העתידי הזה כדי לתאר את מה שקורה לנו היום? או במילים אחרות, באיזה מילים הייתם אתם משתמשים ואיך הייתם מתארים את רוח התקופה שלנו אם הייתם חייבים להשתמש רק בשפה מדעית נקייה? איזה עולם היה משתקף מתוך התיאור הזה? איך ייראה העולם שלנו בעיניכם בלי החיבור הרגשי הכרוך בזה שאנחנו חלק מאותו העולם? תרגיל המחשבתי הזה מעלה בי המון שאלות. ברור הרי שיהיה בלתי אפשרי לנווט העתיד ושההיסטוריה לא מתפתחת בצורה ליניארית, עקבית וסדירה. אבל אני מוצא את עצמי מרותק מהשאלה הזאת מאז שהתחלתי את הפודקאסט. שאלה שגם הפכה להיות לנושא המרכזי בספר שלי, בו אני מנסה לדמיין איזה עולם יהיה לנו בעתיד. למשל, תנסו לחשוב על יום אחד שבו נקום לעולם שבו הטכנולוגיה שלנו פשוט לא תעבוד. לא חשמל, לא אינטרנט, לא כלי תחבורה. איך היינו אז מסתגלים למצב החדש? איזה עולם אנחנו מורישים לילדים ולנכדים שלנו ואיזה אחריות יש לנו האנשים הקטנים בתוך הדבר הזה? אלה הם סוג הדברים שאני אוהב לדמיין, לחשוב ולדבר עליהם בפודקאסט. עבורי זה משחק כיפי שהייתי רוצה להשאיר לכם כחומר למחשבה. אז אם אתם אוהבים את מה שאתם שומעים, או אם אתם לא אוהבים, למעשה, במיוחד אם אתם לא אוהבים את מה שאתם שומעים, ספרו לי. תכתבו לי בהודעות, או תשאירו בתגובות את דעתכם, זה תמיד כיף לשמוע את הפידבק שלכם. כמובן, אם אתם מוצאים ערך בתוכן, תשתפו את הפודקאסט עם חברים, זאת באמת הדרך הכי טובה לתמוך בעשייה שלי. וזאת כמובן המחמאה הכי גדולה שאתם גם יכולים לתת לי. מעבר לזה, אם אתם רוצים לתרום, מעבר לשיתוף הרגיל, אז יש הרבה דרכים לעשות את זה. תוכלו להמליץ לחברים שלכם על הקייטרינג שלי. קייטרינג חליפה. חפשו אותנו בגוגל. אנחנו מעניקים שירותי קייטרינג של אוכל דרוזי כשר לאירועים פרטיים ועסקיים מכל הסוגים. שווה הצצה, יש שם המון אוכל טעים וסיפור של אמא אחת, אמא שלי, שמהווה עבורי השראה גדולה. המודל שלי של אישה חזקה ואמיצה. אמא, אני אוהב אותך, תודה על הכל. וכמובן, הדרך הכי ישירה היא פשוט לתרום ישירות לחשבון הפייבוקס שלי. קישור נמצא בתיאור של הפרק. זהו חברים, עד כאן המסע של המרד להפעם, נתראה בפעם הבאה.